So, and while I'm getting this thing fired up, I have to point out, because I promised my wife I would, I have the world's largest collection of Travels with Charlie, because my wife thinks I have the world's only collection of Travels with Charlie, that nobody else would ever collect it. So that's fair to point out. I want to say thank you to Mark and everyone who made it in this evening for making this possible. I'm really excited about it. I love doing this, having a chance to talk to people about this adventure that I went on, the book that we're going to go through, and some of the pictures that you'll see, and all the pictures are mine. Um, those were certainly highlights of the whole trip. But the real highlight, as it turns out, was the people. You know, Mark mentioned I'm a new birder, a little less than 5 years in. And so when I decided to tackle this effort, there's absolutely no way I could have gotten it done by myself. And I had an awful lot of people that were kind enough to help me. So those people are actually the highlight memories of my trip. You know, as Mark mentioned, my wife and I moved out here to South Carolina 5 years ago from Southern California. We were a little bit impulsive about it. We bought the house online without ever having been here. Fortunately, we liked it when we got here. And the first day that we were here and the real estate agent was showing us what we had bought, this bald eagle flew across the lake. We live on a lake out here. It landed on a pine tree, and I managed to get this shot. At the time, I wasn't a photographer or a birder, but it felt pretty cool that that bird was there. So I really enjoyed that and kept that photo. Like I said, I was not a birder. I wish I had been. My wife and I have been blessed to travel to probably 35 or 40 countries and all 50 states at least a couple of times, and most of them a lot more than that. I certainly saw an awful lot of birds on those trips and could have seen a lot more had I been looking. So that's my bad. But I've enjoyed the heck out of the last 5 years poking around and doing that. Mark mentioned I've been a writer, and I think I just published my 56th or 57th book in the last 7 years, and I love it. And I knew I wanted to write a book about birding, but I'm not an ornithologist or a scientist or a lifetime birder, so I didn't feel that I had that expertise in order to do that. But the movie The Big Year, when it came out in 2011, my whole family watched it, not because of any interest in birding, but we like all three of the actors. And so we watched the movie again. And then when COVID hit and we were in the house, and my son said, "Hey, you're developing an interest in birding. You know, let's watch that movie again." So we did, and it was inspirational to me. But I did not have the expertise, anywhere near the expertise, to go out and do the traditional big year. So I played around with some different ideas. And by the way, the gentleman, Jack Black, the gentleman that he played in real life, Greg Miller, is one of the guests in a new book that I'm writing. And actually, last month, Greg came out and stayed for a couple of days. We had a chance to talk about birding and the movie and all kinds of stuff, which was an absolute blast. But I discovered early on that raptors were my favorite bird. Absolutely love raptors. I don't think they're better or worse than other birds. Mark and I were talking about favorite birds before this started, and you know, people have everything from warblers and hummingbirds and shorebirds and gulls and whatever they might have. But for me, it was raptors. And as I started to look into things a little bit, I discovered that there are 53 raptors that are counted as United States raptors. And that started to seem like a reasonable number to me. So I thought, well, I could do that. I could go find those 53 birds in a year, which turned out to not be true, by the way. It took me 17 months. And the reason for that was my ignorance as to how difficult it would be to find the winter owls. So I had to wait for another winter to cycle around so I could finish this thing off. But it just added 5 months worth of fun. These are the 53 raptors that most people count as raptors. One of the things that's fascinating that I learned as I started the process, there is no scientifically accepted definition of what a raptor is or what a bird of prey is. There is for hummingbirds, there is for gulls, there are for warblers, almost any other storks, any other thing you can think of. Science agrees, but on raptors, they don't. And it reminds me, back in 1964, Supreme Court Justice Potter Stewart was asked to define pornography. And he said he couldn't do it, but he knew it when he saw it. And I think that's kind of the way it is with raptors. You pretty much know what they are when you see them. And so this list of 53 is the one that is usually accepted. There is some debate going on, the biggest one being vultures, whether vultures should be counted or not. If I was doing it again, quite candidly, I would not. I would just have the 50, but that list is going to grow by a little bit. One example being the Harlan's hawk, which is a subspecies of the red-tailed hawk and is probably going to be split from that in the next year or two. The papers have been turned in, and it's just time for the internal debate. The Harlan's hawk has been lumped and split 3 times already, so it is used to being pulled in and out of the list. There are other ones on the list that people discuss. The hook-billed kite, which is more of an occasional visitor from Mexico, but they do nest here every once in a while, so we count them. And some of those winter owls, like the northern hawk and the snowy and the great gray. Truth is, those are Canadian, but this is America, so we claim them, and they go on that list of 53, which is kind of a fun thing. When I started the trip, when I was doing the adventure, I used the 48 states. The other 2 states, Alaska, Alaska does not have any raptors that you can't find in the lower 48, except on occasion they get a rarity coming over the Bering Straits. Hawaii, on the other hand, has 3 raptors, one of which is common to us, the barn owl. A second is a short-eared owl that will also be split out relatively soon from our short-eared owl. It's currently a subspecies, but that paperwork has been turned in as well. They are a pure diurnal owl, whereas our owl here in the continent is crepuscular, so it's early morning and late afternoon. And by the way, as I talk about the distribution and I give you numbers and facts, just so everybody knows, I pulled all this from eBird, and it's from 2012 to 2022. So I did a 10-year period, and those are the numbers. So things could have been different before or maybe have changed after, but there you go. Of the 53 raptors, 20 of them can be found in all 48 states. Obviously different quantities in different states, but it's kind of cool that you can find them all over. 2 of them have been found in 47 of the 48 states, and they've skipped Louisiana. I don't know if they don't like Cajun food or don't speak French or don't like parishes, but they have not been spotted in Louisiana. And for those who are curious, that is the northern goshawk, now the American goshawk, and the northern saw-whet owl. They have not been spotted in Louisiana, at least not yet. So the snowy owl has only skipped 2 states, Arizona and New Mexico. It's been spotted in 46 states. And 5 of the raptors are typically found in 3 states or fewer: the Apple falcon, the ferruginous pygmy owl, whiskered screech owl, the aforementioned hook-billed kite, and the white-tailed hawk. And those 5 can all be most easily found in Texas. So they do get around to some of the other states in the southeast and even get up into the middle of the country a little bit, but those are predominantly Texas birds. People ask about my trip and what I did. I did 7 cross-country trips in my truck. I did 13 round-trip flights. Those flights took up about 50 legs of flights because on many of them I was flying to little tiny out-of-the-way airports. So I'd have a stop or 2 each way. So that added up. And I know a lot of people aren't happy with airlines, and I get that. But just as a point, all 50 of my flights took off on time, every one of them. And 49 of the 50 landed on time. The only one that didn't was a short flight from Houston to Harlingen, Texas. I was going down to look for the hook-billed kite. It's a 45-minute flight. It was late at night. And we got over Harlingen, and the pilot came on and said, "We got some bad news. There's a lot of fog down there. We don't know if we can land. We've got about 15 minutes worth of fuel left. We're going to see if we can get under that fog and land. If not, we're going to turn around and go back to Houston." Well, that was a little discouraging because it's a 45-minute flight, and he said we had 15 minutes worth of fuel. Somebody must have said something to him, because a couple minutes later he came back on and said, "What I meant to say is we have 15 minutes worth of fuel to play with. We've got plenty of fuel to get back to Houston," which is in fact what happened. We wound up going back to Houston and coming in the next day, but that was the only one of all those flights where so everything didn't go perfect. I was on the road for 25 weeks. I visited 34 states, and between driving in my truck and flying, traveled well over 100,000 miles. these are the states that I drove to most often. They're the states that I visited most often. These are the states that I flew to. These are the states that I visited on the trip. And so all the driving that I did around the country, it was amazing because I drove by myself and never had a problem, never had a flat tire, never broke down, never got a ticket. It was really a dream with a single exception, and that exception was my fault. I was in Kalispell, Montana, and was looking for a snowy owl. It had been reported a few days in a row. So I went up there to look for it, rented a car, and Monday afternoon, Tuesday morning and afternoon, same with Wednesday and Thursday. I looked for that thing and didn't find it, couldn't find it anywhere. And it was supposed to be at a small airport, the Flathead Lake Sky Ranch Airport. So I was a little discouraged. So Friday morning I got up and I drove about 2 hours away to a spot that I knew that was great for raptors. I'd been there a handful of times before. I was there for 2 hours and I saw 119 raptors in those 2 hours, not counting vultures. And so 15 of them were great horned owls. I mean, it was a great, great morning. I'd gotten there before sunup. When it was over, I just typed in Manning Road, which is a road that runs around that little airport out there. And sure enough, it showed up 2 hours away. So I thought, this is great. I plugged it in my GPS, turned on my phone, or turned on my books on tape and just started driving. And when I looked up, I was in a traffic jam. And when I looked up higher, I was in line to cross into Canada. As it turns out, unbeknownst to me, there was a Manning Road in Alberta, Canada that was 2 hours away, but in the complete opposite direction of where I wanted to go. And I just didn't pay any attention. So I got there, I explained what happened. That's why I didn't have my passport, because I wasn't planning. I just wanted to do a quick 100-yard U-turn. The Canadians did not believe that I didn't have drugs or guns or somebody in the trunk or something, because they pulled me over, spent 3 hours tearing my car apart. When they were done, they handed me a piece of paper, said, when you do your U-turn, give this to people at the US, I'll let you right back in. So I put my car all back together, did my 100-yard U-turn, and the US was no happier about having me back than the Canadians were welcoming, and they spent 2 hours tearing my car apart. So I spent 5 hours at the border. When I was done with that and coming up with some new creative language to curse myself, I raced back to the little airport in Kalispell and got there with about 20 minutes left before it was dark. And as I pulled into the dirt road, there was a car on the side of the road. And as all you birders know, if there's a good bird somewhere and there's a car on the side of the road, they've either broken down or they're on the bird. So I parked behind him, knocked on the window, and he rolled down the window. I mean, it was freezing. It was below zero. And I said, hey, any chance you're on the snowy out here? And he turned and pointed and he said, you mean this one? And 50 feet away in a guy's backyard sitting on a shed was this snowy. And I just think this is a spectacular picture, not because I took it, don't misunderstand me, just because it was amazing. This bird sat there until just before dark, just a minute or two, and let us take pictures and look at it and admire it. And then it took off and flew right overhead. And it was just a beautiful thing to see, a really special moment for me. And I still caught my flight that night and got out of town. Ferruginous pygmy owl, not one of the easier owls to get here in the lower 48. Mark, you mentioned Costa Rica. They're much easier to find down there. The easiest place to find them in the lower 48 is King Ranch in Texas. If you don't know King Ranch, it is a massive place. It's 825,000 acres. And from perspective stake, it is, compare that to the state of Rhode Island, which is 777,000 acres. It's actually 50,000 acres larger than a state. You can go in, you can hunt there, you can do corporate retreats, you can do all kinds of stuff. One of the things you can do is bird, and the thing they're most often asked to find is the ferruginous. So I went on the first day they were open, which was March of the year I was doing this. Got the tour, which is the driver, a mother and a son about ages 40 and 20, and the four of us took off for a day. Very early, we heard the bird, but not a great hear. Certainly wasn't going to count it. A little later on, we saw one dart by. Not a great look. I wasn't going to count it. And then about 2.5 hours later, maybe 8:30 or 9 in the morning, said, okay, let's stop and have breakfast. So we're out in the middle of the grasslands, and we stopped to set up at this picnic table in the middle of nowhere. And as I sit down on the bench and I look up, this is what I was looking at. This ferruginous pygmy owl is about 20, 25 feet away, sitting on a branch. And it stayed there the entire breakfast. We were probably there 30 or 40 minutes. It preened, it slept, it never left the branch. It was just a magical moment. And when people ask me about why raptors are my favorite, this is one of the reasons. You get to do this with raptors, whereas with most birds, you don't. And not everybody thinks that's a big deal. For me, it is, and I absolutely love it. And while we were there on the same day, I wrote about the white-tailed hawk. Now, the white-tailed hawk is a beautiful bird, most common in Texas. And in Texas, its nickname is the firehawk. The reason for that is over time, they've learned that when there is a grassland fire raging through Texas, if they follow along the trailing into the smoke, all of the insects that are exploding up off the ground, the grasshoppers and everybody else that get through that smoke and come out on the backside, it creates a tremendous buffet for these white-tailed hawks. And so the people that have lived there a while and been through some of those fires will tell you that when they see them, if you watch behind, you will see white-tailed hawks lined up at this amazing buffet for them, which is a pretty cool deal. The mother and son that I mentioned in King Ranch that I had met, really nice couple. She's probably 40, 45. At the time, her son was a junior in college at UC Davis, ornithology major. He's since graduated. But he said, hey, if you have some trouble getting on a spotted owl, or if you just want to get back together, give me a call. I can do that for you. He had interned the year before for a timber company, and his job was to find spotted owl nests and mark them so the timber companies could then put a quarter-mile border around those nests and not take the timber out, not harvest that timber. So he said, I still know some people there, so if you want to come on out, I'll give him a call. We can probably get on a nest. So in the summer, I took him up on that, gave him a call. He said, look, I'm going to give you very precise directions, but you have to follow them exactly because where we're going, there's no cell phone or anything. So if we miss each other, we won't be able to connect. And he wanted me there at 5 in the morning. So I got there at 5 in the morning. Turns out his directions were perfect. We connected. It was pitch black. He said, let's walk up this trail a little bit. So we walked up probably a mile and a half. It's a pretty narrow trail. We couldn't go side by side. We were front and back. And then we get to a spot. He said, I think if we make a right here, we should be able to find a spotted owl nest. Well, I'm looking, and we're in a forest, and it's rock solid. I mean, there's between the undergrowth and the bushes and the trees, there's no way to get through. Suddenly, the guy reaches down to his leg, and it had been dark when we left, so I hadn't seen it before. Reaches down to his leg and unstraps 2 machetes. And he says, we'll just chop our way through. So he hands me a machete, and sure enough, we start chopping our way through the forest. We go maybe a third of a mile, and we come to an opening. It's a round opening, about 60-foot round. And sitting right in the middle of that opening is this spotted owl. And so once again, as it become our habit in the 2 times we met, we sat down and had breakfast and watched this spotted owl, who again pretty much stayed on this branch and preened and slept. It did drop down at one point, grab a mouse and eat it. That was pretty cool to be able to see. We absolutely love that. And after a while, we just got up and backed away and walked back to the trail. And this guy never looked stressed, never looked bothered, let us take all the pictures we wanted. It was really, really a cool time. And then on our way down, we found another pair of fledglings. And this is one of them, these big giant fluff balls. So mom was there. We were guessing it was mom and either a brother or sister of this one. But those were just fantastic to see. And once again, they were just really cool. They didn't mind us being there, and mom didn't get defensive, and the babies weren't moving much. Frank was guessing that they'd fledged that morning or maybe the evening before, so they were just hanging out. You can see on the left-hand side there the tree, which is where they go. Right, they go right in that little crack between a branch and a tree and hang out. So it was a pretty cool deal to get to see that. So we wound up seeing 4 spotted owls that morning, which was great. Swallowtail kite, the Fred Astaire of raptors, so elegant, so beautiful. I mentioned before, we live on a lake. My son and I were out one day. We took the pontoon boat out into the middle of the lake, shut off the engine and laid down on the benches, lit up a cigar, and we were just looking up at the sky and and talking about things the way fathers and sons do and having a great time. And two swallowtail kites flew overhead. I managed to snap this shot of one of them. As we found out when we got back to the house, it was the first spotting of a swallowtail kite on this lake or in this county. So I called the few friends I had in birding at the time, and of course they came racing down. But what it did is it solidified the book that I wanted to write. This is the first chapter, The Swallowtail Kite. And on the boat trip back to the dock, that's where we came up with the name RaptorQuest and really nailed down the idea for the book. And so that's why we put that one as the first bird in the book. We do get them. They're coming soon. My son thinks he might have seen one today, so hopefully we'll be getting them soon. I don't know. Mark, do you guys get them in Kansas? Do you get the swallowtails? Sorry to make you go
Yeah,
off.
occasionally in
Okay.
August and September.
Okay. Well, we get them here about the same time, maybe late July. In the last 3 years, there have been roughly 25 swallowtails and 15 Mississippi kites that flock together. And there's a farm up top that no longer cuts down to the ground. They leave about 6 inches. So it's perfect habitat for grasshoppers, millions of grasshoppers. I don't imagine it's the same birds, but it's the same ratio. Shows up 3 years in a row. The 40 combined kites. They roost in one tree, even though there's a number of trees. They fly out together, all of them, and hunt their grasshoppers. And when one of them heads back, within 2 minutes, the other ones are back as well. It's a really neat behavior to watch. And you can get these terrific shots of the swallowtails as they're going around looking for their grasshoppers. Some of the small owls weren't terribly easy to find. Rocky Mountain National Park. There's a gentleman there named Scott Rashid, who is a small owl expert. He has written books on the four small owls that call Rocky Mountain home, and he was able to get me on all four of those small owls as well. I met him when I started this project, and I've been out to see him 3 or 4 times since, and have really enjoyed getting to know him. Oh, I did not mean to do that. My apologies. Getting to know him and his passion for the owls. Um, I help him with his banding project, which he does every year. He starts this year September 15th, so I'll be there September 15th. And what he's looking for there are northern saw-whet, and then what you're looking at now is a boreal. This is one of the boreals that we had caught in the mist net, I think 2 years ago. So the four small ones are the northern pygmy, the boreal, the northern saw-whet, and the flammulated owl. And Scott was able to get me on all four of those, actually on multiple trips. So they're beautiful, beautiful birds, and he calls them Coke can birds because they can fit inside of a Coke can. He doesn't actually use a Coke can, but he does use, for those of you that remember, the old orange juice concentrated cans where you pop them open and throw them in a pitcher, add some water, and you've got orange juice. He uses one of those. So when we catch the bird, you put it in that, and he uses that to weigh it and control it a little bit. Then he can pull it out and sex it and make sure it's healthy. And from the time it hits the nest until the time it's released, his goal is to do it in less than 5 minutes. So it's a pretty cool deal to go through. Northern pygmy, this is his favorite bird, and it's a fantastic bird. It's a diurnal owl, a pure, true diurnal owl. This one was from January in Yellowstone. I went out there for a book I'm working on. I had to work on a chapter on bison, but I did get to see some great birds, including this northern pygmy, who once again gave us some time. I was there with a buddy of mine, and we were able to get some shots. And God, I just love watching these birds. I love watching these little owls. They're so fierce. They seem to be afraid of nothing, and it's a pretty cool deal. Northern saw-whet, another beautiful bird. This is another one that we had gotten the mist net and let go. This next one coming up is a Cooper's hawk. This is from a trip to Wyoming. I drove out there. I was given directions on how to get to a banding station and a hawk watch. It's up in the middle of the mountains there in Wyoming. I drove from South Carolina out there, got within, I guess, about 2 miles, and couldn't find it. The GPS was failing me, or I didn't understand it, or something. And I kept going back and forth for about an hour. I could not find where I was supposed to go. And finally, I found a beautiful gate and opened it up, let myself in, drove down about a mile to a stunning ranch house, probably 6,000 square foot ranch house. It's these big solid wood doors, 10 feet tall. And I figured, well, maybe they can help me. So I knocked on the door and it was amazing. 10-foot door. This woman that opens the door is somewhere between 50 and 150 years old. She might have weighed 80 pounds. She was made out of leather. And when she smiled, she lit everything up. She was just a remarkably generous person. And she opens the door and she looks at me and she goes, "You looking for the birds?" And I said, "I am." And she said, "Every week I get somebody here that can't get where they want to go. These directions are terrible, but they won't change them. And so I'll get you up there. But before I do, how about you sit down and have a sandwich and a glass of water and we talk for a couple of minutes?" So she made me a sandwich, got me a glass of ice water. She told me a couple of stories about her ranch and sent me on my way. And I did get there. I went to the Bandian station first. They had just caught this Cooper's hawk as I was walking up the mountain, and they were nice enough to let me release it, which was a really cool thing, and an absolutely stunning bird. This is another look at one. This is one in Arizona, and I just think they are gorgeous birds. Red-tailed hawk, one of the most popular and one of the most populous of the raptors we have in the country. A couple of tales about red-tailed hawks, one of which many of you will know. The other one, maybe some of you will know. But red-tailed hawks, if you're watching a movie or an ad or a TV show and you see a bald eagle in it and they let out that fierce war cry, that's not actually the bald eagle. The bald eagle has a high pitch. It sounds like something the bald eagle should be catching. It doesn't sound like what a bald eagle should sound like. But instead, they use the red-tailed hawk cry. And for those of you that might remember, there is something in the movies called the Wilhelm scream. It's considered the perfect scream for somebody who's fallen off a building and is plummeting. It's from a 1951 movie called Distant Drum. And that scream gets passed around to all kinds of movies and has for 70-something years. It's the same with the red-tailed hawk war cry. Sound engineers are passing around one example of that, which is being dubbed in on all these different movies and ads and TV shows, which I think is really cool. We owe the exploding population of red-tailed hawks to President Dwight D. Eisenhower. When he was elected president in 1952, one of the first things he wanted to do was build an interstate highway system. And he wanted to do that for two reasons. Number one, 70 plus years ago, we had a lot of people moving from the eastern part of the country to the western part of the country following World War II. So he felt that a big highway system would be helpful for that. And they wound up finishing that in 1994, obviously long after the president passed away. But the other thing that we did, which was unintended, was we built perfect red-tailed hawk habitat. You go through these different forests and different areas and you build the freeways, and then 20, 30, 50, sometimes 100 feet on each side, they've got mowed and cut down areas, which is perfect for moles and voles and squirrels and various mammals and amphibians. And then the red-tailed hawks said, "Hey, if only we had perches." So we put up telephone poles and power poles along every major highway in the country. And those work out great. And you can see red-tailed hawks in all 48 states, all throughout. When I was in California in December, I drove from San Jose down to Central California, about a 3-hour drive. And the guy that I was with that was counted 140 red-tailed hawks on telephone and power lines in a 3-hour time, basically one a minute, which is just amazing. This particular one is from my front yard. I love it when the red-tailed hawks come. Sometimes they treat my feeders like a buffet, but it's a reasonable price to pay in order to see something that absolutely stunning. Peregrine falcon is another bird that is benefiting from people. Obviously, there's a lot of complaints about the way that we're treating the earth and most of the animals in it. Peregrine falcons have benefited once we overcame the DDT problem from the 1980s, and they have become the urban raptor. Every single major city in the lower 48 states has peregrine falcon nests inside of it. And there are two major reasons for that. The first one is that peregrine falcons are cliff nesters. And what do we have in every major city? We have skyscrapers, but peregrine falcons think they're cliffs. So they're great places for them to nest. And the second thing is they have an unlimited food supply because they love pigeons. Their preferred food is pigeons, and what do major cities have? An unlimited amount of pigeons. So it's a pretty cool deal. The closest big city to me is about 3 hours away. It's Atlanta. And I was there last year. They called me in and they built a Peregrine Falcon box on the 50th floor of the Four Seasons Hotel. So I'm going to be going out there soon. Hopefully they're nesting there now. I plan on talking to them this week. What's interesting about building on the 50th floor is that's the ballroom. And they built the nesting box right up against the glass. So when you open these massive drapes on the 50th floor at your bar mitzvah or your wedding or your anniversary party or whatever it might be, you might very well be watching a peregrine falcon munching down on a pigeon, which I think would be an interesting reaction generated from some people. If you like peregrine falcons, a great place to see them is in Torrey Pines in San Diego. Torrey Pines is on the beach, and it's a cliff, not a terribly high cliff, 100 feet, 120 feet, but there are peregrines there all year round. They're nesting now. I'm going out next month because I'm hoping to see the fledges. But you can go out and see the peregrines. They're easy to shoot, and just a simple walk around the cliff, maybe a half-mile total. You can be on top of the cliff going down and shooting down on top of them. So it's really a spectacular place to see what I think is a truly, truly amazing bird. Another place to see great, amazing birds are bald eagles. And if you're not familiar with it, in Maryland, the Susquehanna River, there is a dam called the Conowinga Dam. And when the shad run up the Conowinga, or up the Susquehanna, which is normally around November, they go through the Conowinga Dam and they get knocked unconscious or they get killed, a lot of them. And the bald eagles are there in the hundreds in order to take all of these free males. And if you're a photographer, the dam people are great. When I say dam people, I mean DAM people, the people that run the dam. They open up the secure area, and photographers and birders are allowed to line up along this short fence and spend from sunrise to sunset there if you want. So I've gone and spent maybe 3 days at a time. You just sit there and or stand there, whatever you want to do, and you can just shoot over and over and over. If you want to watch them fighting, you can do that. They're battling all the time for food, and the juveniles are learning how to handle themselves in aerial battles. But this is what you get to see. And it's outrageous. I mean, it's just spectacular. I think it is one of the great spectacles in birding, is to watch these birds. And the last one I'll mention that has a mass number of birds are the osprey. And there's a place called Sebastian Inlet, which is about 45 minutes north of Vero Beach on the east coast of Florida. Osprey are pretty cool because along with the barn owl and the peregrine falcon that we mentioned, these are the only three raptors that can be found on 6 continents. There are no raptors in Antarctica, but on the other 6 continents, those are the 3 that can be found: the barn owl, the osprey, and the peregrine falcon. But at this place, in the fall, starting around September, these mullet that you see start running through a fairly narrow inlet. And there are 2 long walking piers that go out on either side of the inlet. And they're for fishermen and photographers and whatnot. And you go out, and there are dozens of osprey there from sunup to sunset, and they're there for maybe 6 or 7 weeks. They're there all year round, but in the big numbers, they're there in the fall when the mullet run. And you can see them pulling out a single mullet like the one you're looking at now, or you can see them pulling out 2. A friend of mine sent me a picture the other day of an osprey with 3 fish, which I've never seen before, but that was pretty cool. They're not always happy to see you, as you can tell by this particular shot. And they are unique in a number of ways. This is one of the things that I love about osprey, and maybe why I think they're the coolest of all the raptors. Number one, they have a pure sushi diet. As much as I love sushi, I admire that. I don't know that I'd ever get tired of it. Number 2, they are the only migratory bird in the world, not just raptor, but the only bird in the world that carries a lunch with it during migration. So an osprey, like a lot of birds, will try to double its weight and reduce its glands and do a number of things to prepare for a long flight, say 650 miles over the Gulf of Mexico. But the last thing an osprey does is grab one more fish, flip it head first, which they always do, give their little body shake and take off, and they carry that fish with them. And then as they're flying along that route, if they get hungry, they tuck their head down like a swallowtail or Mississippi kite eating a grasshopper, and they just eat that fish on their way. Only ones that do that. The other thing that they are the only ones that do on a regular basis is when they fledge for the first time, which is normally early fall around September, and they head down south, let's say to Central America, they do not come back in 6 months. They come back in 18 months. For reasons that scientists haven't figured out yet, ospreys skip a season. So they stay down there for 18 months. And then they come back at the 18-month mark, and then they do their cycle like all the other osprey that don't overwinter, 6 months here, 6 months wherever they're going. Scientists haven't figured out the reasoning for it yet, but they're working on it, trying to figure out. Osprey are diving hunters. They can dive up to 2.5 feet, and their eyes adjust for refraction. They're the only raptor that does that. So if you compare it, say, to a bald eagles don't dive. They only hunt on the surface of the water, and their eyes do not adjust for refraction. So a raptor from 100 feet up in a 60-mile-an-hour stoop can adjust for refraction with a fish that's 2 feet underwater and hit it and pull it up, which they do at about 60 or 70% clip. They're pretty successful hunters. Great gray owl, magnificent bird. This one is from winter in Yellowstone. I try to go every December or January. This particular day was pretty cold. It was minus 25 degrees. For those of you that are photographers, you'll know that if it's minus 25 degrees outside, you can't have the heater on and the windows up in your car, because otherwise when you pop that door open, your camera will fog up right away and you'll lose your shot. So it's minus 25 degrees. I've got the windows down, no heater. I'm bundled up. I wind up with 1.5 inches of snow on the floorboards of my car. But I got to see this beautiful bird. And as I was watching it over a period of a couple of hours, it dove 3 times. If you guys don't know, great gray owls in the winter love to dive to hunt. They can hear small mammals up to 2 feet under the snow. They can hear their heartbeat. And so they dive. And I got to watch him or her, I don't know which, dive 3 times, twice successfully, and once dove so deep they went completely out of view. There was, for a brief moment, you could not see the great gray owl at all. So getting to see that in the middle of Yellowstone Park, which is almost completely empty in the winter, in that December, January timeframe, was a real highlight for me on this trip. Great horns. I absolutely love great horned owls. Although I'm afraid I had eastern screech owls nesting in my front yard up until about 5 nights ago. And then I heard great horned owls that night, and my mother screech owl has not been back in 5 nights. So I'm afraid I lost my my breeding screech to this great horned owl. And by the way, if any of you are big owl fans and you have not been yet to Zaxim Bog in the winter, which is up north of Duluth in Minnesota, I strongly and highly recommend it. You can see up to 7 different species of owls there on any given trip. Great gray, boreal, snowy, northern hawk, northern saw-whet, barred, and great horned. It is an amazing trip for big owl fans. People ask me if I went and sell rarities. I do. I will chase raptors around the country. This roadside hawk was down in Texas. And again, Mark, if you make it to Costa Rica, they're pretty common down there, but not here in the U.S. The last one was seen in 2005 before this one showed up. But I did get to see it. I also got to see the bat falcon that was down in Texas, if you guys followed that at all, which was great. This coming up will be my worst picture. A terrible picture, and for that I apologize. But this is a stellar sea eagle, and that little tiny bird to the left of it, that's a bald eagle. So if you've read at all about that stellar sea eagle that showed up 2 winters in a row in Maine and was recently seen in Newfoundland, which is what happened the other 2 winters when it showed up in Maine, if you get a chance to go see it, it is well worth it. It is, depending on how you measure, it is one of the top 3 biggest raptors in the world, along with the harpy eagle, and I want to say Eurasian eagle owl are the other 2. The harpy for sure, and I think the Eurasian eagle owl. But this is a 20-pound plus bird. What you're looking at the bottom, you can't really see it, but that's a Canada goose that it took out of the sky. They are tough, tough birds, and they're massive and they're gorgeous. And so if it does show up and you get any kind of a chance, I strongly recommend that you do that and get up there. They're fairly easy to find when they do make it to Maine. This bird seems to have gone to the same place all 3 winters. This is a northern hawk owl. This was my last bird of the 53. I had just gone up to Montana to get gyrfalcon. Came home, and 3 days later, I get a call that the northern hawk owl had been seen in a little town called Wise River. It was an odd thing. The people were friendly. They were willing to tell me that it was there and that it was in Wise River, but they weren't willing to tell me exactly where. For them, that was crossing a line. And if you guys don't know, eBird ghosts a number of raptors. So if you report, let's say, a northern hawk owl or a gyrfalcon on one of your eBird lists, you'll get credit for it and it will show up, but it doesn't give the exact location. It just gives a big purple box, which can be a massive area. And the reason they do that is because there are people that poach the babies and sell them for upwards of $20,000 to falconers. So you need some good fortune to get on some of these birds. I flew into where Bozeman or something and drove 4 hours to Wise River. I allowed myself 4 days to find the bird. And as I pull, I'm not even in town yet. There's a little dirt road. I thought, well, I'll just try this dirt road. So I do. And I just drive down the road, and there's a power pole on a 15-foot dirt road. And sure enough, this bird is there. And I sat and I watched it and got some pictures, got to see it hunt. There were 2 other cars there, and it was great. It was a terrific afternoon. I went back the next morning. There was nobody else there, but the bird had returned to the same spot. So I watched it again for a couple of hours, got to see it hunt. It just kept coming back to that same power pole. And then as we hit about the 2-hour mark, the bird dropped down from the power pole. And when it got about 2 or 3 feet above ground, maybe 2 feet above ground, it swept across the road, and with its left wing, it brushed my blue jeans. I don't have any idea why. Certainly it knew I was there, but it just brushed my blue jeans, kept going, and landed about 30 feet on the other side of the road. For me, it was a spiritual moment. It was amazing. I remember that as an absolute highlight of the 17 months, and that's probably why this picture of that bird wound up on the cover of my book. This northern hawk owl. Might have been recency bias because the last one I shot, but I think it was because it was the most impactful of the birds that I saw on that trip. If you have an interest in picking up a copy of the book or taking a look at some of my pictures, you can go to this website, naturallyscott.com. We're going to have a Q&A. We're wrapping up here in a minute. But if you have questions that come up afterwards or in the next couple of days, please send me an email. I am happy to answer any and all questions. I absolutely love doing that. One of the things that I will share with you is all of the pictures in the book, all the photos, and all of the photos that are on my website. Other than some cropping and a light color adjustment, they are the pictures that I took. I don't believe in sweeping away twigs or changing backgrounds or anything. Other people can do it. I don't have a problem with it. I just won't do it. This one picture is the exception. So as you look at the picture, it is a ferruginous hawk. That is the background color. Pinnacles National Park in California. It was on that crossbeam, just like it looks here. And that yellow sign was on that crossbeam. What I did change, the one modification is that yellow sign used to say high voltage, and I changed it to thank you, which is what I want to say to all of you. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen tonight. I had an absolute blast, and I would be thrilled to answer any and all questions you guys might have. That's a really weird effect. I had no sound, but I could see people clapping. That was a weird thing. Thank you very much for that.
Can you hear me, Scott?
I can hear you absolutely.
So, well, if anybody has a question, speak up, and he may be able to hear you. I've got a mic connected here, and if not, I can repeat your question.
Yeah, I just wondered that last hawk that we heard a word about taken. Why is that hawk so silent?
I couldn't hear. I'm sorry.
The question was about, I think it was about the gyrfalcon
Yes.
why they're sought after by poachers.
Oh, falconers love them. Falcons are a favorite bird for falconers, especially in the Middle East. So if they can poach them and get them out of the country, they can get up to 20 grand for those birds. So that is why. And people do it. So eBird started blocking it and trying to stop that. And it's had a positive impact. I mean, as you guys know, if you get a rarity somewhere in Kansas and somebody posted on eBird, it's a duck that has never been seen. You can pretty much narrow it down to a single tree and people can find it. But with these birds, they do not want to do that. So they've stopped and they block it.
Yeah, that'd be fine if you like to come closer. Hi, Steve.
I guess this question is, have you ever seen,
Let's see how this works.
but I'm gonna be, maybe just take a minute to tell a quick anecdote. The opposite of chasing birds, there was a full season hawk watching the Manzano Mountains, southeast of Albuquerque. The bird
Mark?
was,
Can you hear him?
It was a bit muffled, Mark. Would you mind repeating it, please?
Steve, it might work better if you just, I've actually got.
Okay, that's not. Okay, I was at a hawkwatch site on the Manzano Mountains and we saw a very bizarre looking bird. My coworker, Tucker Danielson, fortunately had a long lens and took some good pictures. And first we tentatively identified it as a white-tailed hawk, which in hindsight was a bad ID. It was later determined to have been a red-backed hawk, also known as a varied hawk. It's a I looked for it on eBird and the sighting wasn't there. There were a few in Denver. But anyways, this bird way out of place from South America. So I was just gonna ask, have you ever seen a red-backed hawk in the lower 48?
I have not, nor have I heard of one in the lower 48. But I'll tell you what, if you see it again, give me a call because I'm on a plane.
Unfortunately, is it 2017?
All right, so probably flown somewhere else by now. No, I never have. But that's very cool. Thank you for sharing that.
I had never heard that story. Any other questions?
Did you come from Kansas and where did you go?
Question was, did you come through Kansas at all on your trips? And where did you?
I did. I drove through a couple of 3 different times. And I like Kansas. I mean, I enjoy it. I get out to Colorado a lot. I've got family out there, so I drive to Colorado a lot. And so I go through Kansas on my way and I thoroughly enjoy it. I've got a goal of seeing 50 birds in each of the 50 states. I just did Kentucky last week. So I've got to get out to Kansas and lock up 50 birds.
I think we can manage 50. Scott, as far as the birds that you saw, the favorite might have been that hawk owl that you mentioned. What do you think was the hardest one you had to work the hardest for?
Might have been the same one.
Same one.
Same one. I had to, and again, if I was to do this again, now that I've got more experience, I would be better at it. And I could do it in a year, I believe, with just a tiny bit of good luck. But one of the ones that was challenging was a hook-billed kite. I made 4 trips down to southeastern Texas to get on a hook-billed kite. And the first 3.9, I failed. And if any of you have been to a place called Benson State Park in southeast Texas, they've got a nice hawk watch. You sit up, it's elevated about 25, 30 feet, and it looks over the Rio Grande into Mexico. So you're watching into Mexico, and then that's where the birds lift off in the morning when it heats up. And it's about 1.5 miles from the parking lot out to the hawk watch. And they run a tram out to the hawk watch so people don't have to walk that 1.5 miles. I've gone 3 times. I did not get on it. People saw it before I was there and after, but never during. And then the fourth time I went for 3 days, I didn't get on it. And so I was having to walk back and head to the airport. So I skipped the tram and just I was just going to do the 1.5 mile walk back to the parking lot and mull over how I was going to have to explain to my wife I needed to come back a fifth time to get a hook-billed kite. And as I'm walking back, I was able to get on a hook-billed kite and snap off a couple of pictures. And it was just spectacular. It was just so cool to see. So that was, I'm not sure that there's another bird that I went out after 4 times, and that was probably a total of 8 to 10 days without getting on it. So that might have been it. But others have found it easily and simply. I mean, that's where you go. You go to Benson State Park in Southeast Texas, and you know, if you look at eBird and stuff, sometimes it'll be seen 6, 7, 8 days in a row. Sometimes there'll be 3 or 4 of them. But it's I guess what you would call a nemesis bird for me, or it was. It just seemed like I would go in the trough period and not get on it. Maybe that made it sweeter.
Your pictures are incredible. Were you a photographer before birding? Or
I
did
was
you-
not.
Okay.
I was not. I took up photography once I took up birding, in large part because I just couldn't explain to my wife how beautiful some of the things I was seeing were. And I thought, well, I better get a camera so I can show her. And since then, that's just taken off. And I love the photography portion of it. I feel very, very blessed to be able to get some shots, and it's a really enjoyable thing for me. And it, you know, it's one of those things. Not everybody enjoys it. Not everybody thinks it's a good thing, or they think it, takes away from watching the birds. But for me, it doesn't. That picture behind me is from September. My wife and I were down in Tanzania and Kenya for a while, and these little bee eaters, as it turns out, they were all over. But the first ones I saw, I didn't know if I'd ever see another one again, and that was where this picture came from. And that's a hard bird. I mean, I'm a writer. I think I'm decent with words, but that's a hard bird to explain to somebody that hasn't seen it. When you try to tell them just how colorful and beautiful it is, and so for me, the pictures help. Maybe 1,000 words worth.
Mark, what I think of here, but I'm curious about 50 books in 5 years. Makes me feel pretty inefficient.
Bob had a question about your 50 books that you've recently written in 5 years. He seemed that made him feel inefficient in comparison.
Oh, Bob, it's not hard at all. The moment you trade quantity for quality, you're good to go. You just start banging them out, and I have a great editor and a really solid publisher, so they're very helpful. And once I get writing, I just keep going, and I love doing it. Most of them are Westerns. I think, I don't know, 55, 56, 57, something like that. And probably 35 of them are Westerns. 2/3 of those are novels, and 1/3 are nonfiction. And then the other books are books of quotations, contemporary novels, children's books. This book, the one we're discussing tonight, RaptorQuest. And so I'm able to write on whatever grabs my fancy, and I'm blessed to be able to do that. And I look forward to it. I'm working on a couple more books now in the birding world, and having the best time working on them and researching them.
Any other questions for Scott? The question was, what kind of camera gear do you use?
If that hadn't been asked, this would have been the first time in 2 years that I've been giving this presentation that it wasn't asked. I was just about to say, you're the first group that never asked. So when I'm out shooting, I carry 2 cameras. I've got a Sony A1 with a 200/600 lens, and then a Sony A9 with a 70/200 lens. And so I can cover the range. If I'm out shooting big mammals, next month I'll be shooting elephant seals on the coast of California. I won't need my 200 to 600. but the 70 to 200 will be great. If I'm shooting like these little bee eaters behind me that are fairly far off, then I go up to the 600. So my wife says I carry a pistol and a rifle. And when I do carry both of them, then I trade in the binoculars. I don't carry the binoculars, I just carry the two cameras. And I love Sony. I think it's the best camera out there. But I say that fully acknowledging it's like Coke, Pepsi, or Ford, Chevy. I'm sure that Canon people and Nikon people and Olympus feel exactly the same way about their cameras. So, you know, it's like everybody thinks their kid's the smartest kid and the best athlete and all those things. Well, it's the same thing again. Since I wasn't a photographer, I got to go out and pick. I wasn't married. I didn't have a bunch of lenses. I run into people all the time saying, well, I would have considered X, but I already had 6 lenses for Y. So when I went digital, I just bought that body and I could use the lenses. I didn't have that because I own no equipment. So I was able to start from scratch. I love it. I think it's great. The digital tracking, the 30 frames a second, 50 megapixels. But I think they all make the same camera. I was talking to a buddy today from Florida. He shoots Olympus, wouldn't shoot anything different. And I don't think the specs on his camera are any different than the ones on my camera. But I love mine. And thanks for keeping the streak going, whoever asked that question.
Thank you, Barbara.
Why do you carry that? Shorts with the lenses.
Any other questions?
Asking if he's visited any of the migration sites right at the peak of the season, like especially the Corpus Christi site.
The question was, have you been at any of the top migration spots like Corpus Christi apparently has one during the peak migration?
I have. I've been lucky enough to be Cape May and down in Texas and in Arizona and down on Key West. You know, it's truly an amazing thing to see, to watch the migration come through. And oddly enough, I will share with you, while I love raptors and I will literally fly across the country to see a raptor like a bat falcon or a roadside hawk, I am not a fan of hawk watches. I just sitting there and counting wing beats and looking at silhouettes and birds flying by at 40, 50 miles an hour. That doesn't do it for me. But sitting in the middle of a forest in California and watching a spotted owl for an hour, that to me is, that's a blessed moment. I love that. But again, everybody's got their own thing that they like. Everybody's got their own. I know people who wood warblers are their favorite birds, if you can imagine.
Well, thank you, Scott. Any other questions?
Thank you guys very, very much for being here this evening. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And I wish you good and safe birding.
Thanks a lot.